Welcome back to the Independent Republican Mike Graham right here on TalkTV. It's a bit chilly out. It's the 1st of June, which I haven't really mentioned yet. I probably should have mentioned it because it's always worth mentioning when you enter a new month, you pass over the Rubicon into what can laughably be called summer. Because it's not very warm at the moment, certainly not down here in London. It might be where you are. If it's warm where you are, then good luck to you. But, you know, Wimbledon's not very far away. The Derby coming up, of course, at the weekend. The FA Cup final, which always is the kind of harbinger of the summer. I always used to remember as a child watching it and remember thinking, oh, look, the sun beating down on Wembley. You can't see the football very well because there's a big bit of shade over there and a big bit of sunshine over there and the cameras don't adjust terribly well. And how do you know that it's that weekend now coming up? I'll tell you how you know, because there's a train strike. You won't be able to get to the FA Cup final by train, which is particularly unfortunate considering the two teams in it are both from Manchester. But let's talk to Simon Calder, who is, it says here, travel correspondent, surely travel guru to the stars at the Independent. Simon, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. On my list, it says cheap and available, but there we are. Very nice to talk to you from Britain's busiest railway station, London Waterloo, this morning, where actually things are going pretty well. No great hold-ups, but of course that's going to be a very different story tomorrow when the RMT union goes on strike. And then on Saturday, as you say, 3rd of June, Derby Day, FA Cup final day, and no trains running then because of the ASLEF drivers' strike. And if I may, I'll just sort of explain there's a very significant difference now. I mean, we're now basically a year on. It was last June that the first national strike since the 1980s began. And so I dare say your lovely viewers would like to know about what's happened since then. Well, all the kind of, as it were, the more marginal issues have been settled, so that, for instance, the Transport Salaried Staff Association and Unite have all signed agreements. The main rail union, the RMT, has signed an agreement with Network Rail, who are in this office behind me, and that's all done and dusted. What we're now at is over a dozen train operators, including all the long-distance operators. That's LNER, Avanti West Coast, Great Western, Cross Country, Transpennine Express, and basically most of the really important commuter lines as well in England. And luckily, if you're lucky enough to live in Wales or Scotland, you won't really notice because your local trains are going to be running. It will be a problem if you want to get to England. Anyway, the RMT and ASLEF are both sort of on the same side in the sense that they say we need a decent pay offer. The government, which is ultimately going to sign everything off, has agreed 4% last year, 4% this year. They say we basically want more than that and we don't want any strings attached. The government says, have you seen what's happened to rail finances? Have you seen how many billions we poured in to run empty trains during COVID? Of course, you're going to have to make changes to your working practices. And that's where we are. And that's where we've been since last year. RMT, I think, are closer to an agreement. In fact, Mick Lynch, the boss of the RMT, I think was really quite surprised that his union, the executive committee, just basically said, no, this offer is rubbish to the last one. But the train drivers, led by Mick Whelan, my goodness, they just say, yeah, we'll keep going till Christmas if we need to.
Well, this is the thing.
We don't care.
I mean, the bit that you missed out there was that they're both in agreement on many things, ASLEF and the RMT, mostly on trying to get rid of the Tory government, because that seems to be their main aim in life. Mick Whelan claims he didn't realise that it was the FA Cup final when they decided to call the strike on FA Cup final day, and it's purely coincidental that people won't be able to get down. But will it be that sort of... Because RMT, I know yesterday's ASLEF strike meant that there were really hardly any trains at all running. When the RMT go on strike, it's not quite as bad usually. I mean, will there be any trains running at all?
Oh, yeah, and it shows the real difference, Mike. So basically, your rail ticket for the past year has been something of a lottery ticket. But these days, we know that if the RMT goes on strike, many people will be able to get where they need to go. So let's take the West Coast main line. That's Avanti West Coast, running from Liverpool, Manchester, Glasgow, West Midlands into London Euston. There will be a half-decent service between about 7:30 in the morning and 7 in the evening. And that's repeated on an awful lot of lines. It has much less effect than the drivers' strike.
Right.
So, yeah, if you want to plan a journey tomorrow, there's a fairly good chance you'll make it. But come Saturday, when it's the train drivers once again going out on strike, they basically closed down everything on Avanti and Trans-Pennine Express and cross country and so on. LNER on the East Coast Main Line and Great Western will be running a sort of service, but it's pretty grim. And of course, people are thinking, well, what do we do? Do we just plan our lives around the strikes, or do we think actually there's other ways of travelling, and let's just work out what they are? It's an absolute mess, and the fact that it's been going on for a year is to the immense diminishment of all parties. It just shows, yeah.
And it just encourages people not to book tickets on trains, really, unfortunately. But let me finish up with it's still half-term week. There'll be people coming back from parts abroad, I guess, over the course of the next few days of the weekend. We had a problem with the e-gates at Heathrow. We learned today that a Home Office source says that basically the reason for the glitch was that somebody upgraded the system on Wednesday before the weekend. Now, you and I both know whenever the computer geeks get together and start upgrading things, the wheels all start to fall off.
Yes, very much so. So 6 years ago, this week, British Airways completely collapsed, imploded for, the 2-3 days at the start of the half-term holiday and the bank holiday weekend. And that was exactly the same thing. Somebody was sort of fixing something. I think they turned something off.
Yes.
And then they couldn't quite turn it back on again. And the entire operation came to a halt. It is quite remarkable. And I'm not an IT specialist, but I do talk to them. And they say, look, you do not do these things so that there is any risk that you can turn something off or make an adjustment and that's going to wipe out everything. You do it bit by bit. You monitor what's happened, and then you gradually roll it out.
Yeah.
But for the whole of the UK's e-gates suddenly to be unavailable was a terrible embarrassment, extremely inconvenient, and yet another sign that things don't seem to be going terribly well, Mike.
No.
As you point out.
Well, indeed.
Every day.
I mean, if I ever see an engineer looming anywhere near this show when it's on, I always tell them to get lost and come back when somebody else is on. They'll fix it then.
Yes, but anyway, I'm among.
Are you
many,
off
many
anywhere
loyal...
exciting for the next few weeks or days?
Of course, life is one long holiday, so I'm off to beautiful Scandinavia because it's June. It's going to be midnight sun in the Arctic, off there first thing tomorrow morning.
Very nice.
But I will be thinking of you, Mike, and of course your lovely.
Well, don't
viewers.
forget you can tune in at all times from any place in the world. So I'm sure you'll be listening.
I know.
And or watching. Very
Highlight
good.
of my trip. Yes.
Brilliant stuff. Simon, good to see you. Simon Calder from The Independent there. More train strikes tomorrow, more train strikes on Saturday, but at least it won't be as bad as it was yesterday because it's an RMT strike, so you actually will be able to get some kind of train. It will probably just be slower, it will be more unreliable, but it will actually get you from A to B eventually. But if you're in a hurry, you might not want to use it. This is TalkTV.